Iran's Shiraz Electronics complex was hit 13 times in 7 days. Not collateral damage, not overshoot. A deliberate, systematic campaign to dismantle the industrial nervous system of a country at war while that country was simultaneously trying to fight back. That image should be circulating in every relevant ministry in New Delhi right now, because the question it raises is not about Iran, it is about India. For decades, the assumption embedded in Indian defense planning has been that war happens at the border. The front moves, the rear stays. Manufacturing corridors produce what the front line needs, and the front line is where the danger lives. The US-Iran war has demolished that assumption in real time. From the opening hours of Operation Epic Fury, the US-Israel campaign treated Iran's entire defense industrial ecosystem as a first-wave target. Iran has returned the favor against Israeli defense manufacturing with the same logic. India's defense manufacturing corridors in Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu and Bengaluru are not rear area sanctuaries. They are targets that adversaries are already wargaming. Field Marshal Asim Munir's public threat to strike the Jamnagar refinery before Operation Sindoor was not bluster. It was a preview of exactly the targeting philosophy now being validated over Iran. Geographic dispersal of critical manufacturing must become a planning requirement. And Mission Sudarshan Chakra, announced by Prime Minister Modi in August 2025, must explicitly extend its protection architecture to defense industrial nodes, not stop at military formation boundaries. The New York Times analysis of satellite imagery from the opening days of the US-Iran war identified something that received far less attention than the missile barrages. 7 US military bases across the Gulf lost communication and radar infrastructure in the first wave of Iranian strikes. The ability to see, communicate, and coordinate degraded before the kinetic battle had even fully begun. India's C4 ISR nodes, the command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance architecture that ties together its military operations, are equally exposed. A future conflict that opens with simultaneous strikes on radar systems, satellite ground stations and communications hubs would not just damage India's ability to respond, it would damage India's ability to understand what was happening. Hardening and dispersing this infrastructure is as urgent as protecting the factories. Next comes the drone. Iran has been firing Shahed drones costing between $20,000 and $50,000 each. The US and its Gulf allies have been shooting them down with interceptor missiles costing millions. The mathematics of that exchange rate is unsustainable, and it is the same mathematics India will face. India currently has no cheap counter-drone kill chain at the scale this threat demands. India needs to build its capabilities in this sector. But against those warnings sits the validation of Operation Sindoor, and the first thing it validated was the most basic: know what you're hitting before you hit it. 9 terror infrastructure nodes were confirmed by multi-agency intelligence before a single strike was authorized. The targets were chosen with a specific operational logic: nerve centers at Markaz Subhanallah in Bahawalpur, weapon storage at Sarjal, forward launch pads at Kotli and Muzaffarabad, not selected for symbolic or punitive value. The difference between intelligence-led targeting and reactive bombing is the difference between a surgical operation and a war crime waiting to happen. India got that right. The entire operation was executed with domestically developed or assembled systems, BrahMos missiles, loitering munitions, without US platforms, foreign logistics chains, or external intelligence dependency. India refrained from targeting Pakistani air defenses or forward-deployed aircraft in the early phases of Sindoor, not for lack of capability, but because it understood the escalation ladder it was choosing not to climb. The nuclear dimension was managed through deliberate restraint. India's no first-use policy held, Pakistan bore the escalation onus by striking military targets first, and India's strikes targeted only terrorist infrastructure without attempting to hold or capture territory. If the targeting was Sindoor's operational achievement, the exit was its strategic one. India communicated the limited scope of its operation to Pakistan from the outset. Left an off-ramp open deliberately. When Pakistan's DGMO called, India accepted a halt, but on its own terms, defining what followed as a conditional bilateral understanding rather than a ceasefire. That distinction preserved India's future freedom of action without surrendering the initiative it had established.
India entered Sindoor with one objective, demonstrated it, absorbed Pakistan's response, delivered a final warning signal at key Pakistani airfields and stepped back having made its strategic point, without losing control of the narrative, the escalation ladder, or the endgame. The contrast with the United States could not be more direct. Washington entered epic fury without a defined exit. India entered Sindoor with one. One is still fighting, the other went home. The US-Iran war and Operation Sindoor are not just two conflicts happening at the same time, they are two case studies in opposite approaches to modern warfare playing out simultaneously. One a compendium of warnings, the other a compendium of validations. The classroom is open. Both lessons are on the table at the same time. The question is not whether India is watching, the question is whether it is acting before the next exam.